Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be dialing in from around the world. Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar, Conquering the Next Surging Financial Crime Wave, presented by IT Novarica Group. I'm Michaela Bernier, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. We'll be starting the webinar shortly, but first, let me just cover a few quick housekeeping items. Today's webinar will be recorded, and a link to view the recording on demand will be available after the session. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to submit your questions using the questions feature located in the GoToWebinar toolbar to the right of your screen. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's speakers. Trace Boucher is a strategic advisor in IT Novarica's fraud and AML practice, covering fraud and data security issues. Trace has been a leading business transformation initiatives for over 20 years. He started his professional career in Singapore, where he focused on delivering process automation solutions for banking and security clients by way of workflow and document management-based transformations. After moving back to the United States, he broadened the scope of his focus to include consulting with clients on customer relationship management practices and client loyalty for Ernst & Young. Trace has also spoken at several industry conferences on topics related to payments and fraud prevention. Trace is joined today by Chris Rawlis, Global Head of Fraud and Authentication at Behaviosec. Chris is a fraud and authentication SME with over 15 years of experience fighting financial crimes. Chris spent the first 10 years of his career working in operational and strategy roles at Bank of America, JPMC, Citi, and TD Bank. Over the past 5 years, Chris has taken his practitioner experience into the startup world of anti-fraud and authentication, working at Pindrop and BioCatch prior to joining Behaviosec. As Global Head of Fraud and Authentication at Behaviosec, Chris partners with fraud teams across the globe to help strategize and operationalize Behaviosec solutions to stay ahead of the latest digital fraud threats and scams. So without further ado, I'll turn the mic over to Trace for further introductions and to dive into today's content. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed today's webinar.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here. I hope everyone is having a fabulous Wednesday. I am very pleased to be joined today by Chris Rawlis. Chris, as mentioned in the intro, spent 10 years as a fraud leader in a handful of top 20 FIs before crossing over to the other side of the market in 2016, where he's now Global Head of Fraud and Authentication with Behaviosec, now a LexisNexis Risk Solutions company. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Trace, and thank you to the audience for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us, and I think a very important discussion. So, really looking forward to today's session.
Yeah, it is. I think a pretty hot topic lately. Fraud attacks are surging again. They kind of, sort of took a weird kind of hiatus during the pandemic, but not really. It was. I mean, for me, it was interesting to watch the trends over the course of the pandemic because, as I mentioned, to say it was a kind of a sort of hiatus. Anytime I say that, our research folks get on me for pointing out that really fraud continued to increase